one of the tales that I remember reading about when I was researching your work was the tale of Mami Wata, which growing up in Cameroon we heard a lot about, and I believe it's probably extends to Nigeria and other parts of Western
Yeah,
Africa as well. Could
West
you,
African culture. Yeah.
yeah, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you discovered, or maybe even the tale, because this is something that we heard about growing up, and it was kind of seen as, let's not talk about that. Let's, it's mystical, right? So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about specifically the Mamiwata mystical story.
Okay, so Mami Wata is more a mythological figure than just a tale. She is um, there is a story, but she's a mythological figure that's representing devouring mother, the seductor woman, and she's connected to the water. Mami Wata mean water is for water. She's supposed to be a mermaid, or in some countries she lives near the water, but we don't. It can be different depending of if the country has the beach or if it has another type of water place. And she represents, in the same ways, mermaids represent the seductive woman, attracting men into into ambush and taking them without, them knowing that they were being ambushed. That's a very, very important topic in humanity at large. Like, in every country, mermaid is associated to calling men into doing things they don't want to do, or they want to do, but because they don't know what they're doing, or being seduced and killed tragically, because they represent the fear humanity has against women and against nature at large. Because in every story, women are connected to nature because they give life. So nature gives life, so women give life to make the connection. Women are nature. Because they're not to be controlled, because they're associated to the lack of control, lack of predictability. For example, the adjective lunatic is connected to the moon. Women also are connected to the moon because of their cycle, because of their unpreciseness. The sun is always the sun, but never, the moon changes shape, changes form, depending of the month. So in this idea of women being unpredictable, society has given that idea that's completely constructed and actually very socially driven, that women are uncontrollable and have to be controlled. There is a fear about women's domination that's expressed in this relationship all humanity has towards the devouring mother. And this idea of Mami Wata being attractive and sexually attractive to men is also neglecting the capacity men have to control themselves, because they are being attracted and they are being lured, but they don't know what they're doing because she's a sorcerer, so she can take advantage of them. So that also translates this idea that women are evil. So if something happens to them, maybe it's their fault. So this idea is the grassroots for also many, many other representations of women as being at fault in many situations. And it's also the soil for gender-based violence, for women abuse, for many things that are ways to accept fatality against women, because they have this side of them that's attractive, and men cannot respect this idea that in social representation, it's actually this also countering the feminism and the feminist representation of Mami Wata, because if she is a woman, she's wealthy, she's beautiful, and she's attractive, she's supposed to be a good character, right? She's supposed to be successful. But no, she's evil. because people want to be with her, and they will lose everything they have being with her. So there is also this rejection of emancipation in women, as in the idea that emancipated women characters in storytelling are always the bad characters. The witch is always wealthy. She always has power and money, but she's the witch. So there is this idea of being submissive and being good, cutting teeth. Being authoritarian is not good. So tales in tradition have the idea to educate and shape people into making the world work the way people want it to work. So they have this idea of sending a message that's supposed to be protective of specific frames of understanding, of specific situations that have to be maintained in a specific order. If you take, for example, storytelling that I've analyzed in the character of the devouring mother, every story where there is domination by women starts with a chaos. So there is something very wrong in the fact that a woman is at the top of hierarchy. But when the prince or the character that's supposed to be helpful and save humanity comes, then he restores the order. This means that the order has to be the one that comes next, but the chaos is first. But it brings the other idea that in a specific psychoanalytical theory that was created by an other very, very brilliant psychoanalyst whose name was Melanie Klein. And she was the main psychoanalyst that came and started to work after Sigmund Freud. And she brought a completely different perspective. First, she was a woman, so she had another way of seeing things. And secondly, she said, okay, so Freud said this about children. Well, I'm going to see children and I'm going to play with them to see how they are feeling and what I see from them. And then she started her work like that, and she started her theories really centered on this perspective. How do children feel, and how do they express their inner fears, and how do they show what's inside of them? And then she adapted a therapy technique, so because she felt like the psychoanalysis and the way Freud was working was not effective with children, so she had to find ways to connect with them. So she used games. She was working with games. She played with those kids, and she was observing them playing. And what she found was that what Freud called the phallus, I'm not sure how we say it in English, the phallus or the phallus.
Yeah,
So
phallus, yeah.
Freud naturally thought that phallus has to be masculine because he's a man and he sees that the power is on man's side. So he says that the phallus is masculine. So whatever happens, people want to get to that level because being a man is being on the top of hierarchy. So the phallus is masculine. So if someone gets out of the Oedipus complex, they just want to get to the male side. Either they want to be next to a man or they want to be a man, but it always has something to do with a man. So Melanie Klein, what she says is that actually that's weird because whatever the sex of the child is, they're always coming to life through a mother. So it's not like if the child is a boy, he's being fed by the father, and if it's a girl, she's being fed by the mother. The mother is always feeding both kids, whatever they are. So there is no connection connected to the child's sex, gender. So the child comes out of, a mother's womb, and the first interactions are very structuring for their construction of their psychic system. And at this specific moment, whatever the child's gender is, the domination and the phallus is the mother. So the phallus is feminine at first. And then when society makes its work, when the child is being exposed to the rest of society, then there is this idea of the phallus being exported from the mother's side to the outside, because there is another entity that's hierarchy, that's social order, that's expressing a pressure on the mother, making her socialize the child through the education process. But this movement of being connected to a woman who is completely powerful has stayed in humanity in the form of this fear of womanhood as an uncontrollable, powerful thing that people do not have the power over. And this is what transpires through every myth, every tale, every representation of the devouring mother as the figure, the feminine figure that the society is afraid of. And this is why this figure is everywhere, because everyone has had this feeling of being completely powerless compared to an entity that was feminine, that was completely powerful. So this representation of how society has shaped in the global unconscious this fear of womanhood is actually really rooted in some of the concept of psychoanalysis. And that explains these many mythological feminine figures in every tales, in every place where you go.